I'll start. Very good afternoon, everyone. Maharashtra Pollution Control Board, in association with IIT Delhi Alumni Association, are today celebrating the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies. The theme for year 2020 is Clean Air for All. In Rig Veda, air is considered as the agent for the welfare of the people. Air is addressed differently as father, brother, and friend. Vayu is prayed to impart good health and eternal happiness and blessings. Ancient India realized the importance of clean air for ages. Air is one of the most important factors over the earth, without which one cannot imagine good health, productivity, flourishing economy, and a healthy environment. Recently, the United Nations General Assembly designated 7th September as the International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies. This day will be celebrated annually to raise awareness and mobilize global action to address air pollution issues. The very first International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies has been held on September 7th, 2020. This is an urgent call by United Nations to understand the importance of clean air and sensitize the same to the masses. So today we are celebrating this day with MPCB and IIT Delhi Alumni Association. We are very honored to have with us Mr. Sudhir Srivastav. He is the Honorable Chairman of Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. We also have Shri E. Ravindran. He is the Member Secretary of MPCB. We have our President, IIT Delhi Alumni Association, Mr. Ravindra Kumar, Professor B.R. Gujar, Honorable Dean, IIT Roorkee. We also have Dr. S.K. Goel from NEERI and Mr. Partha Basu from Environmental Defense Fund. We have in attendance now participants from various regional offices of MPCB, IIT Alumni, delegates from NEERI and other organizations. So now I would request our President, Mr. Ravindra Kumar, for his welcome address. Mr. Ravindra Kumar is the President, IIT Delhi Alumni Association. He represents an alumni base of 52,000 alumni in India and abroad. He has his BTech from IIT Delhi, 1987 batch in civil engineering. He's armed with an MBA and an LLB and has been a technocrat with the BHEL for 5 years, bureaucrat with the customs for 17 years, and now has been an entrepreneur for the past 12 years as owner of the Global Tax Guru. He has been involved in policy advocacy related to blockchain, drones, and legal metrology. For 3 years as tax expert, he has answered readers' queries on the Economic Times portal. So now I would request the President for his welcome address.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Gitanjali Kaushik, giving me an opportunity and giving very nice words about our association. And you have taken this initiative of Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. This is our second webinar. So I welcome all the distinguished panelists, experts, subject experts, attendees, Alumni Association, alumni and other public, and those who have taken the time to attend this webinar. Well, I can see already we have around 45 participants are there. So IIT Delhi Alumni Association in association with the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board, as Gitanjali already has discussed, is celebrating the very first International Day of Clean Air for Blue Skies, and the aim that today's day aim to raise public awareness. Clean, as said, the clean air is important for health, productivity, the economy, and the environment. And just before the webinar, Gitanjali told me that without air, we cannot survive more than 3 minutes. So I just was asking her what is the importance of today's webinar. So we know that we are in this world till we have the air, we can breathe the air, the prana are there. So we'll have a very good distinguished panelists and experts are there. So they will talk about the more on the technical sides and other things. I'll just give my brief understanding about what it means clean air for all, and especially this clean air for blue skies. Right now I'm addressing you on the 10th floor of my office, and whosoever visit, I not put any, any curtain. Because I love to see the sky. even though because the heat comes and sometimes it becomes the AC become less effective. But I love, because from my this window you can see the Aravalli ranges. So somebody comes visit to my office and tell him, see, the Aravalli ranges are there, because of pollution it's not visible. But when there is a rain, you can see from my office the Aravalli ranges. So that is the how I interact every day with the blue sky. So the blue sky, the theme is very relevant, and my first the thought comes to blue sky when the popular character in Munna Bhai MBBS, when the circuit and Munna Bhai, when they in the emotional scene, when they talk about the mother and they say the mother has become the star and we cannot see, because there is so much pollution in Bombay that I can't see the mother. So that is the, I mean, with that the character highlights through the story in the film that the importance and how they, I mean, Mumbaikars are facing the pollution. But the story is not different in Delhi also. We recently there was a report that those who are living in Bombay and Delhi every day will smoke 20 cigarettes. And they, I mean, yesterday there was a news in Times which says that that heavy rain, low traffic gives city a breather, 9 good air days in a month. Even yesterday only I came to know that there are certain good days, because I am used to live this type of life. And yes, in Delhi, those who live that after Deepavali, there will be a problem of the breathing and other, because this burning of the paddy in the Punjab. So that is only when we see the national integration, because whatever happened, I'm living in the NCR region. So we have been blessed with the storm winds from Rajasthan, and at the same time, we get a good air, I mean agriculture paddy air from Punjab. So that is what those who are living in the NCR, they are aware. Yeah, but but I believe that there are 4 E's are very important for the environment to be effective for the citizen. I mean, if you talk about the environment, then slightly when you go to bigger, we have the ecology, then we have ethics and the empathy. So I will talk about mostly about ethics and the empathy, how they plays role in having the clean air or the good environment. Because what I feel that unless until the citizens have ethical value of the environmental, they become responsible environmental citizen. When I am aware of how whether I'm polluting or adding to the surrounding nearby my environment, unless until I have those sensitization, then only the public policy can become the personal policy. Unless the public policy become personal policy, when I imbibe myself, that imbibation will happen when there is a change in my behavior. If whatever the talk was, whatever the technology is there, unless until I am not changing my behavior, this will not have the much impact. So I feel that we should have an environmental responsible citizen, like we have the other criteria are there, that there is honest officer or the ethically. So ethically, I think we should be a responsible citizen, should be, and that should be inculcated in childhood. See, so that is what I would like to discuss with another 1 or 2 minutes, because I think the time constantly will be there. But the major thing which I want to highlight here, that even small changes can have a big impact. Like when you are crossing the red light, you can switch off your engine. If there is a waiting period is 120 minutes, or you can expose yourself to the environment also. It's not going to give a big, but it's going to have a very big impact on your carbon footings. See, the one query in a Google involve 1,000 computers and bring the result in 0.2 seconds. Suppose I reduce I don't do the useless queries. I can save a lot of to the environment, because it says that one laptop which sits in my lab costs around it's costing around 14,000 times of the weight impact, generate the waste in the environment, 4,000 times of the laptop weight. That is the impact I'm giving to the environment. If you have the system which are upgradable, like I'm talking to a system which this is bought in 2009, still I'm very comfortable. My children say, Papa, it's become very outdated. Yes, I have moved to tablet, I have moved to iPad, but I discarded both of them. But I moved to my mobile phone. But laptop I have not changed because I don't find anything. Because my fingers, everything is become used to the such kind of keyboard. So even the small change, small adjustment will have a big impact on the environment load. That we can reduce a lot of environmental load if we have the small changes, small behavioral changes. Even urban planning, rather than putting a lot of red light crossing, where possible, we should put the U-turn. So that will impact a lot of mobility and will save a lot of fuel and energy. So even small changes will have a big impact. I'm not a subject expert, so I'll not speak much on the technicality. So what I want to say here that unless until people become empathetical, they become sensitive that what my action is going to impact. I'll just share my small idea that in my AC, that it is written the temperature should be 24. If you increase temperature by 1 degree, it will save your cost of financial cost to 6%. But I think that we should have, apart from the other message also, that if you reduce by if you increase the temperature by 1%, it should increase your immunity, because you will not put the load to the environment, or it will give your lungs power will increase. I think we can add those things also apart from the cost, because over the period, because of Western thoughts, Western education, everything we talk the profit. What is end of the day? So because environment you cannot pitch to the public unless until you show the other dimension of the saving. So I just conclude my thoughts on this topic, and I will just request Satish to play the song नीले गगन के तले धरती का प्यार पले, ऐसे ही जग में सुबह और ऐसे ही शाम ढले. Yes, Satish, please. Sound, so voice is not coming. Thank you, Satish. Voice is not there. Thank you. I think we have seen only audio. There was, I think sound was not there. But the message there that that says when there is a below the blue skies, only with the love can blossom. When there is a love, the humanity will survive. So our survival depend on the blue sky. With that, I just conclude my talk, and I personally again I welcome Mr. Suresh Srivastava, Honorable Chairman of MPCB on the board. I welcome Mr. E. Ravindran, IS Member Secretary MPCB, and Professor B.R. Gujar. I think he's a IIT Delhi alum. I welcome as alum and as a distinguished speaker. And I welcome Dr. S.K. Goyal, Head NIRI Delhi Zone Center. I welcome also Mr. Partha Bosu, Lead India Advisor on this, and of course my fellow colleagues Kalpen Shukla and other executive committee members, including Dr. Gitanjali Kaushik. Thank you very much, and I hope that I'm very thankful that all distinguished speakers have taken a time and we have come out with such a nice, and I hope that all the participants will be benefited, and I'm again back to the Dr. Gitanjali Kaushik. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, President Sir, for your welcome note, and indeed a very nice way to start. Neele gagan ke tale, dharti ka pyar pale. So now I would request Professor B.R. Gujar for his distinguished address. Professor B.R. Gujar is a professor in civil engineering, Dean of Resources and Alumni Affairs, and also the head of Center for Transportation Systems at India's premier Technological Institute, IIT Roorkee. He holds a PhD in the area of environmental risk analysis from IIT Delhi, followed by postdoc research at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. He has over 25 years of experience in industry, teaching, training, research, and consultancy. Professor Gujar has co-authored 9 books and has more than 140 publications. He has received several awards and fellowship, including the prestigious postdoctoral research fellowship of the Max Planck Society, Germany, UKRI grant to visit the University of Surrey, UK, And he is among the leading academicians and researchers who have worked extensively in the area of environmental science and engineering, especially focused on air and water pollution. And we are very proud that he is our alumnus. So over to Professor Gujar for his distinguished address.
Thank you, Dr. Geetanjali, and thank you for Maharashtra Pollution Control Board and IIT Delhi Alumni Association, office bearers, chairman of Pollution Control Board, member secretary, and other colleagues, and my fellow panelists and attendees of this particular program. So this is very important topic as President has already given some dimensions why this is so important, why blue sky is so important, not only from health perspective, but also he has touched upon this emotional dimension. If we want to see the stars, how this blue sky is important. So in this brief presentation, I would like to touch a few aspects of policy issues and how technological interventions have played important role in developed countries, so-called developed countries, and how we are changing them in terms of policy and technology so that we can also control air pollution emissions and we can also have better air quality to live in. Well, this is something which you might have come across at several presentations, that how different studies have highlighted this impact of air pollution in India. For example, one study from WHO says that it's fifth leading cause of death, outdoor air pollution, and more than 6 lakhs people died in 2010. Then related to, like, it reduces life expectancy, and I would say means it's a silent killer, because if we consume polluted water or toxic food, immediately you get the effect. Either you will have diarrhea, you will have a stomach problem or something like that. But unless it is like accidental exposure, very acute exposure, this chronic exposure of air is silent killer. We don't get to know about it. And one fine day we find that maybe our average age was 70 or 80 years, and we just die at 60, 65, and we don't know that our 10 to 15 years have been taken out silently by air pollution. We don't comprehend this very serious situation or problem which come across through air exposure. So different researchers have come out with various findings, and it impacts our infrastructure, our agricultural productivity, our health, and our day-to-day life. So it's important that we should control the air pollution emissions. We should improve the air quality. If we compare, policy issues of USA vis-a-vis Indian context and some other Asian countries, let's see the timeline. How did they formulated policies in the US. In 1955, they had this Air Pollution Control Act, okay? And then in 63, they got Clean Air Act. In 65, Motor Vehicle Air Pollution Control Act, where they regulated the emission standards. In 67, then they established regional air quality standards. In 70s and 77, they came up with amendments of Clean Air Act, and in 90s they set some rules to reduce air pollutants emissions, and like how to control ground level ozone and acid rain related pollutants and other toxic emissions and so on. If we compare it with our Indian scenario, like, of course we were quite uh, alert towards other issues, like we had Factories Act in 1948, but if you see the air pollution related act, we came up in 1981. This Air Pollution Prevention and Control Act, we brought into practice in 1981. So you can see how far 55 and 81. So around 25 years we are lagging behind in that way. Motor Vehicle Act in 1988, and they had it in 1965. So, well, we are lagging behind, but then you can see that, of course, we picked up and we, um, uh, in a fast forward mode, we brought in some other related acts and rules and regulations like ozone depletion substance related rules in 2000 and municipal solid waste related rules in the same year, noise pollution, okay, and recently environmental impact assessment related reviews has happened, and a new act would be, or policy would be there into practice. So how this success came into existence if we compare with the USA. So you can see the implementation was so nice, though even though their activities like the GDP was increasing all the way, if just few recessions may be there, but overall it has been increasing. Then vehicles miles traveled, that also increased continuously, right? And then you can see the energy consumption or population, but the CO2 emissions, that is the indicator of greenhouse gases emissions or burning of fossil fuels. So this decreased after 2005 or so, and it is continuously decreasing. So the aggregate emissions, they are successful in decreasing to bring it into the decreasing trend. Well, similarly, if we see the impact on this motor vehicle related emissions, so if we compare with the 1970, then you can see that around more than 99% or around 99% reduction of tailpipe emissions they achieved because of policy plus technological interventions. If you compare with 2013 data, okay. Similarly, you see this lead related, unleaded gasoline they applied. We have similar story. We also have unleaded, petrol, and that's why we got rid of this concentration of lead into the air. Well, also at the same time, if you see the NOx emissions reduction, that's a wonderful story, I would say, because all over the world, whenever we go for efficient fuel burning technologies, okay, efficient, this automobile industry, this increases NOx emissions. It's very difficult to control the NOx emissions. It's a same story in all over the world, but USA has successfully implemented some, catalytic reduction technologies, and their even NOx emissions along with the particulate matter, they have been decreasing. You can see here. So that's the, I think, the good practices or the best lesson we can learn from them. Then they had this innovative nitrogen oxides or NOx budget trading, NBT trading program. So that also contributed in this NOx reduction, success story. That's the thing in summer, like this also controlled ozone because NOx is a precursor for ozone, as you know, hydrocarbons, VOCs and NOx. And once, ozone production takes place, then it's cyclic story. It's very, very difficult to control the ozone. So it's better we should control the precursors, whether it is VOCs or NOx. Once we have to find out that this is VOC driven or NOx driven, according to the atmospheric chemistry of a peculiar position, it may differ. Means NOx may be the prime factor or VOCs can be the prime factor. So once we get deduced to that conclusion, then we should know how to control that particular precursor. But if you see the experience of air quality trends in India, we have been successful in reducing this SO2 emissions, sulfur dioxide emissions, and of course particulate matter emissions also in a way. But this NOx emissions, we are not able to control it. Even in Delhi, means if you see the trends, we have been able to reduce the visible pollution. Soot is not there now. Air is cleaner in comparison to several decades before because of CNG and other policy issues. But NOx emissions are still a problem, and that problem we should, tackle in a, sooner is the better. Well, if you see this particular data about the special origin of ambient particulate matter, this PM 2.5, which is quite problematic related to health issues. So you see in different states, this has given very interesting data regarding like how much is local sources are there, then how much is coming from the neighboring states, and then from other even outside the country also. So those kind of this is a uh, sort of source apportionment, you can say in a crude sense, that transported from other places. So this way we can learn that how much we can control local, because there is a limit. If we don't know how much it is coming from the outside, and if we focus on controlling the local emissions only, then maybe we don't get the results. So that thing also we should be able to distinguish between. Well, if we see other countries in Asia who are controlling their emissions, so like VOCs related or agricultural policies related, China has done much appreciable implementation of policies, and they have reduced this air pollution emissions in different sectors. Ours is also a success story. Of course, I will let you know, like Delhi, I have given you example. Like in cooking programs like Prime Minister Ujjwala Yojana, and there are so many policy interventions which are giving very good results. Like we are investing a lot of money in solar and renewable wind, etc. That's a very good trend, I would say. So slowly, if we reduce the share of fossil fuel related energy sources, and we shift towards renewable sources, we can have better chances to improve the air quality, because through this LPG, when this penetration of LPG has gone towards middle class and even lower strata in rural areas, the results have been very good. There are many publications which say that air quality related improvements are there. In Japan, of course, they have better treatment technologies. So even like solid waste management, we don't have that kind of technologies. If you visit their this management plants, you'll find it's like a hotel. There is no kind of visible emission suits or puffs or plumes there. So that very high class or high standard technologies they have into place. Other stories are also there from different countries, so we can compare our place where we stand. Well, in solar and wind, USA and China and Japan, they are quite ahead, but India is also picking up. India is picking up slowly, so that's a good sign, I would say. I would appreciate it. And success story in terms of air quality improvement in Delhi, you can see like CO emissions at ITO. So this is data of a particular place. So CO emissions have reduced over the years in a significant way. So that's good thing we can replicate in other cities. But cities have their own characteristics, their own character. So we can't just replicate any policy issue blindly. We have to see which are the important sources there. Somewhere it may be transport sector. In other cases, it may be industry related sources. So we have to identify the sectors first, and only then we can implement what kind of technologies we should go for. So like NCAP, this is a big program of central government in our country, and all states and all pollution control boards, plus academic institutions, research institutions, and stakeholders, municipal corporations, all these are participating. This is a big program and very ambitious program also. And our colleague from academia, Professor Tripathi, is leading at national level, at states, and at different cities. Many other colleagues are also there. They are contributing in their own way, along with member secretaries and teams of pollution control boards of different states. So I am very hopeful about this program's implementation, because targeted, there are so many cities which we have to target, like 122 cities are there, and we have to bring the pollution up to certain level. So this would be a great story in near future, I would say. And these are the references I have gathered data my students have helped. So I'm thankful to them. This is a brief introductory kind of policy and technological interventions comparison between some developed countries and our country, and what lessons we can learn from them. And the takeaway lesson, I would say, is focused on NOx emissions. We should not be complacent about it, and we should target some policy interventions so that before this ozone related problems emerges in our, cities or suburban areas, because in cities sometimes, titration occurs and ozone reduces because of NOx emissions. But in downwind areas, this may be a big issue, and our rural folks who are dependent on agriculture, they may, have these harmful effects of ozone related problems, which may be because of NOx emissions. So thank you very much again, and this is all I would say, and I end my presentation here, and leave to Dr. Gitanjali.
Thank you so much, Professor Gujar. You gave a very, very interesting insight into the evolution of the policies and then the technology part, and also about the NCAP. And surely we are very hopeful that we'll be able to control it as per the target. So thank you so much for your distinguished address. We are really grateful. You keep very busy as a dean, and still you were able to find time for us. So thank you so much, sir. Now we will be inviting the chief guest for today, Mr. Sudhir Srivastav ji. He is the chairman of the Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. Sir graduated in chemical engineering and joined the IAS in 1983. He is presently the chairman of Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. He has also worked as Home Secretary to the Government of Maharashtra and as Finance Secretary to the Government of Maharashtra. Also, he was the Planning Secretary, Transport and Excise Secretary, Chief Executive Officer of Maharashtra Maritime Board, Secretary Family Welfare at different times. He has also been on the board of various infrastructure companies, such as the Maharashtra State Electricity Holding Company, Maharashtra Airport Development Company, Mumbai Metro Rail Corporation Limited, Nagpur Metro Rail Corporation, Konkan Railway, Maharashtra Jeevan Pradhikaran, and various irrigation corporations. He also has been the member of the board of trustees of Mumbai Port Trust and Maharashtra Pollution Control Board. Between years 1995 to 2000, Srivastav ji was also with the Government of India in the Ministry of Finance, Banking Division. He has worked in areas relating to rural credit, deposit insurance, banking supervision, and stressed bank resolution, supervision of non-banking finance companies, technologies in bank, and a host of banking policy and legislative issues. During this period, he was on the board of directors of the Andhra Bank, Indian Bank, Tourism Finance Corporation of India, and the Deposit Insurance and Credit Guarantee Corporation. Srivastav ji has also worked as executive assistant to Union Finance Minister and got an in-depth exposure to policy issues in diverse sectors such as power, aviation, telecom, railways, highways, steel, petroleum, and education. In his early years, he has worked as subdivisional magistrate in Amalner, as deputy commissioner sales tax, as chief administrator SIDCO, and as district magistrate Gadchiroli and Akola. Particularly noteworthy is his 4-year stint as Deputy Commissioner Sales Tax, which gave him a thorough cutting-edge exposure to taxation, and the stint as District Magistrate Gadchiroli, which gave him a first-hand experience of the complex problem of Naxalism. Srivastav ji has very rich and diverse exposure, which has given him deep understanding of the fiscal, financial, and real sectors. Sir, we are deeply honored to have your gracious presence today with us for the celebration of International Day, and we welcome you once again on behalf of IIT Delhi Alumni Association. So thank you so much, sir, for joining us. I request you for the keynote address for today, sir.
Thank you, Gitanjali. Firstly, thanks for having me here, for hosting this very nice webinar on this International Day of Clean Air, Blue Skies. And thanks all for the pretty elaborate CV kind of thing which you read out. And I was getting a little embarrassed, and I was about to tell you that you can cut it short, because for us, while we keep on moving from jobs to jobs, the present job is in which we get immersed. So present role as Chairman Pollution Control Board, actually what engages me almost completely. And though it is as you could see, pretty different from what I have done in my professional career, but very much related to what I did in my undergraduate and postgraduate studies. And in fact, it was for me to connect back to my old subject and also connect up with my old colleagues who continue to pursue their career in chemical engineering. Let me take off from what the president of the Alumni Association, Mr. Ravinder Kumar, mentioned about his being able to see the Aravalli ranges when skies are clearer. And I want to share with you one experience about what a clear sky can mean. I remember about a few years back, as I was flying back from Varanasi to, I suddenly looked out to find some snow-clad mountain-like, range visible, and somehow or the other it looked suspiciously like the Mount Everest. So I actually checked up with the aircraft crew, and they said, "Sir, yes, sometimes you can actually see the Everest as we fly from Varanasi across to Delhi or Calcutta or even to Mumbai." So if the air is clean, the visibility can be as high as 500 kilometers, because that was the kind of distance that we were flying from the Everest. And in a way, it is also a telling commentary on what we, in the pursuit of our progress, have kind of inflicted on nature. And of course, nature has a way of kind of reminding us that if you overstep, then there are consequences. And I think the present times, for the last 5 months especially, we are all quite aware of the kind of consequences that may happen if we take nature for granted and neglect the consequences of what we do to nature. Though there are many theories about this pandemic has emerged, but certainly one thing is quite clear, that the fact that we have encroached upon the habitat of organisms and in a way given opportunity for various viruses to move from their natural habitat to human beings is the proximate cause of the pandemic. And of course, we had some zoonotic diseases earlier as well. Now, I think Professor Gurjar has given a very detailed, elaborate presentation on the subject, and I really want to kind of take off from there and bring in a little more specific in terms of what's happening in our country. Now, you also mentioned, Dr. Kaushik, about air being something without which we cannot live. And it's a fact that we are immersed in air. And there's a nice statistic that we end up inhaling and exhaling about 11,000 liters of air every day. And of course, as we inhale and exhale the air, along with the good comes the bad, the pollutants. And we are continuously inhaling these pollutants with adverse effect on health. Notable being that it reduces the longevity. And as Professor Gurjar pointed out, studies indicate that the loss of longevity is close to 2.5 to 3 years as far as our country is concerned. And of course, this is the average. So there may be people who are more vulnerable, who may lose many more years of their lives. And it's a silent killer, as or silent malaria, as pointed out. We are unaware, but we keep on in it. Now, if you were to look at any subject, the first thing is that when you into pollution, the question that comes up is, well, how do you measure it? Unless you measure the problem, really speaking, you have a problem finding what the correct solution would be. And as you are aware, we have the National Air Monitoring Program, and close to 500, a little more than 500 stations are which monitor air quality for different parameters. In Maharashtra, I think my colleagues will perhaps give more details, but we have more than 100 stations, 23 of them continuous and 79 of them manual. And these are, while the manual of course follows the reference method, the continuous systems follow a near reference method, which is beta attenuation as far as particulate is concerned. Plus, of course, there are different types of sensors. Now, for a state like Maharashtra, which has an area of almost 200,000 square kilometers, I mean, it's quite obvious that a network of only 100 monitoring stations is not adequate, given the fact that we are dealing with fluid which is everywhere, extremely mobile, responds to slightest changes of temperature and pressure, and therefore has extremely local dynamics, local variations. Therefore, one of the key areas in which all regulators and all authorities are working is how to densify this network. How do you make it more extensive? And the problem is that near reference stations can cost you almost 2 crore of rupees. You want to put up such stations in a dense grid, costs can be too high. And certainly there would be, we would always feel that there could be better use of that kind of resources. So one of the options which people are exploring is to consider sensor-based technologies. And I mean, there is a whole lot of experience elsewhere. So we in Maharashtra Pollution Control Board also have been working with some of the sensor providers and manufacturers, domestic ones. And I am very happy to share with you that very recently we, along with IIT Kanpur, Professor Tripathi, have taken up a very unique project where we invited startups in this particular field to collaborate with us. And what we are offering is a co-location with all our near reference sensors, so that the stability, the accuracy, the predictability, the calibration of all these sensors can be assessed. And based on that assessment, we feel that if we are able to kind of zero in onto some sensors which are accurate, predictable, stable, then we actually use these sensors, which cost between 5 to 10 lakhs, to have a far more dense network of air quality monitoring station. In fact, what Professor Tripathi proposes to do is a little more than merely working out whether or not the calibration is stable. What he proposes is to use a grid of these sensors and get the primary signals and the calibrated outcomes and push them into an AI-based engine, which would actually enable a complete analysis of the entire grid and perhaps give us results which are closer to reality. So I am very happy to have this project, pretty thrilled that we have started this project, and I do hope that we will get good results, which will first and foremost give very good data. Unless you have good data, you actually may be coming up with options which may not be really relevant to the problem at hand. A very interesting project that we took up. Now, when we were looking at some of the mitigation measures, we found that NEERI has proposed, and in some places we have actually implemented something called VAYU, which is wind augmentation, where actually you have some kind of pump in, suck in air, pass them through filters, kind of recirculate them into the atmosphere. Now, one of the issues that I felt was very relevant when we are designing a system like this was to consider, because this is really design is based on a closed box model. So I really wanted to understand what's the kind of natural dispersion of pollutants which take place. For example, if you have a line source like a dense traffic column, then at some point of time you reach an equilibrium concentration at different points. And that really indicates that though you have a source, there is some natural dispersion that is also taking place. And therefore, if you are trying to figure out how how this natural dispersion is taking place, one of the key things that I thought was very relevant was to get a vertical profile of the pollution measurements of pollution load. And all our stations are obviously at near ground level. So here actually we found a pretty enthusiastic entrepreneur who offered us a drone-based measurement of a vertical profile. And we actually commissioned a study costing a few lakhs of rupees and took up a few locations in Mumbai where we did carry out this study. The preliminary data is with us and we are trying to analyze it. But clearly, of course, there are some challenges as far as our ability to assert with full confidence the validity of the data is concerned. But this is one of the studies which we undertook, and I think NIRI Nagpur has also taken up a similar kind of project. We are now planning to work with NIRI to kind of further build upon this particular aspect. So as far as measurement is concerned, I have just mentioned a couple of initiatives, but clearly all of us are interested in mitigation measures. And as far as mitigation is concerned, the challenge is mainly the densely populated urban areas. And as all of us know, that if you were to carry out a source apportionment study, you would find that vehicular pollution plays a major role. In our own studies, which were carried out earlier, studies indicated that close to 1/3 of the pollution in cities like Mumbai or Pune is vehicular air pollution. And actually, if you were to look at receptor level pollution load, then I would believe that vehicular pollution is a very serious contender for being the number one, being at the number one slot, because this is a pollution which actually is happening right where the cells are, where we are, compared to, for example, a point source, industrial point source, which may be distant and which has a dispersing arrangement through a tall chimney. So another aspect of vehicular pollution is that as far as diesel vehicles are concerned, predominantly emissions contain particulate emission in less than PM 2.5 microns particles. In fact, sometimes they can be as low as or even sub 1 micron size. And these are really pernicious, because once they enter into your system, because they are able to beat your nasal filter and then enter into the, and finally they sit there in the alveoli permanently, because there is no way that the body can expel them. So this is very pernicious, and I think this is one of the biggest causes of illnesses that from pollution. So as far as vehicular pollution is concerned, now there are some initiatives. Professor Gurjar did mention we have already moved towards BS6 as far as fuel is concerned, and even as far as new vehicles is concerned. Of course, as far as new vehicles are concerned, though they may move to BS6, we still have to contend with the problem of legacy vehicles. And then the fact that vehicles may have lifetime upward of 10 years, maybe going up to 15 years, the legacy problem is not going to go away very soon. In fact, the incremental improvements that may come from use of better fuel, better vehicles, is not going to make a market difference in the initial years. So we actually had a consultation on this subject, and it's a pretty interesting consultation, because where we actually brought in all stakeholders together. So we had IITDAA, we had vehicle manufacturers, and of course we had manufacturers of DOC, DPF kind of systems. And the question that we posed before this group was whether we can actually have some kind of a retrofitment program on the legacy vehicles. Now, as things would be, most of the vehicle manufacturers, they were pretty downbeat about this. They were not very enthusiastic about this program. They said that at times it's extremely difficult to integrate a, a DPF, DOC DPF system into a vehicle. It can have a issues with the vehicle and even for the performance of the add-on DPF or DOCF kind of system that we are putting in. And they actually were pretty keen on scrappage policy. Now, a scrappage policy will be very good for pollution, but clearly not be good for the consumers who may have to pay heavily for moving to a new vehicle. So we have been thinking and debating as to how to actually address this problem. And I think we have some previous precedent in terms of whether we look at the shift of taxis from diesel to CNG, where we actually had a phase out program. We actually prohibited diesel taxis from plying in some of the urban centers. So we are actually working this out and figuring out whether it is possible in a city like Mumbai or in the MMR region, whether we can actually say that only BS6 vehicles will ply, and the vehicles which are not BS6 perhaps will have to then go on to other areas. But we really need to get data before we are able to move forward on this. Another aspect that we looked at was the PUC system that we have, Pollution Under Control Certification. Now, again, here there's a problem. Though we have a pretty extensive network and there is compulsion, but all of us know that this is a pretty perfectly kind of pollution under control check that's carried out. It's clearly a case for improving this. So we are with our department and trying to figure out what are the steps that we can take. One of the thoughts was that every time a PUC check is carried out, that should be fed into kind of a centralized server. So you have a database tells which way check done, which is not got a check done. And then also have on-road checking of actual emissions so that we know whether or not actually the pollution is under control. Although initial thoughts, and there would certainly be challenges, but these are ideas pursuing. Because there would be, if I talk of vehicular pollution, I don't speak of electric vehicle, be pretty complete. Is moving autonomous vehicles at a very rapid pace. And in fact, many of the leaders are talking of not full autonomy as some rare company keeps on talking of, but certainly talking of stage 4 autonomous vehicles, which would be pretty much autonomous in some regions, well-defined environment. And if you were to look at electric vehicles, as far as in our own country is concerned, it's been a little slow, and we are struggling with both the issue of charging infrastructure and also about the availability of batteries. I'm very happy to inform you that as far as charging infrastructure is now, our building permissions given by the municipal bodies actually mandate that 20% of the parking slots should have charging infrastructure, should be able to accommodate vehicles. But they all clearly work in the progress. Another related area, of course, is designing which are heavy duty, have heavy capacity, also are not dependently on some of the rarer minerals. And these are problems where I think institutions like the IIT need to really take a lead, and we would be very happy to work with them in any area. I mean, I aware that like activities, they are very as far as low cost heavy duty batteries are concerned. But I think together all of us need to really exploring all of these areas. As far as vehicular pollution is concerned, there are other areas in terms, and I actually want to mention about urban planning, because our urban planning actually pushes traffic into downtown areas, and clearly there is a case for ensuring that planning actually discourages more entities from coming into the downtown areas. I mean, we were studying the Lower Parel area in Mumbai, and it is amazing. The two office complexes actually have 25,000 employees, and they have come up only in the last decade. They induce a traffic count of 4,000 vehicles in the peak hour for between 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So you can imagine the kind of congestion they bring in, the kind of pollution loads that are created, concentrated hotspots of pollution that are created. So these are all areas where we need to work. Employers need to take the responsibility of the commute of their employees. Actually, they need to look at staggered work hours. They need to look at work from home. All of these are issues on which all of us need to really continue to deliberate. The other issue on urban air pollution is resuspended dust. And again, I recollect in my childhood, we used to see some of these actually washing the roads. That is now really a distant past. And we do really need to do a lot more about this area. The plain sweeping that we carry out is not good enough. And under NCAP, I think we are moving towards vacuum cleaning of the roads. And perhaps we also need to design our road infrastructure a little better in terms of paved shoulders and greener areas. I also now want to move towards rural areas. And I really want to touch upon the subject of indoor pollution, which Professor Gurjar mentioned. I think one of the key things that has remained with me when I started studying the subject is the fact that the use of unclean kind of fuel, fossil fuel, by our housewives actually is resulting in a very high incidence of premature cataract. And I think one of the achievements that has been there over the past few years is that we have actually been able to provide LPG to a whole host of households. Though there is still some go, but I think a great beginning and great progress in that direction. However, he still remains fossil fuel, and therefore eventually we need to see how we can move our cooking requirements in rural areas to renewable derived from agricultural residue and also towards solar. And this is again an area where some research can be carried out. I know that's an old problem. When I did service, we were looking at this problem. We are still looking at this problem. But clearly, together, if we work, I will be able to find workable solutions. Finally, as far as pollution due to point sources is concerned, thermal power stations, of course, clearly are one of the biggest sources of both SOx, NOx, and also particulate pollution. A very massive investment program has been taken up to provide flue gas desulfurization units. In fact, it's massive in terms of investment, close to more than 70 to 8,000 invested. That would result in a reduction in SOx emissions. Hopefully, we would also be investing enough in trying to reduce particulate emissions from thermal power stations. The norms for cement industry, for steel industry, other heavy emitters of particulate matter have already been tightened, and actually most of the new plants are being designed for 30 ppm. And I can say that from 100 ppm to 30 ppm really is a quantum leap and results in massive increase in investments as far as particulate pollution equipment is concerned. Of course, Professor Gu mentioned about the solarization of our energy mix. That ambitious program. We have set out program 100 gigawatts of 30% of our energy coming from renewables by 2030. And the solar tariffs have fallen greatly, but clearly there are still key challenges which arise from the nature of the renewables, the need for having flexible dispatch schedules, and the need for having storage. There are also areas where more work needs to be done. So I have just kind of given a of various dimensions of the air pollution subject that we are dealing with, and very distinct gathering that I am addressing all past alumni of the IIT Delhi, which is one of the most prestigious premier institutes of our country. I am sure that we would be able to find some ways of partnering in trying to solve some of these problems. Thank you for a very patient hearing. I don't know whether I exceeded my time, but thanks a lot for being patient.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. We are very, very glad to have you with us, and we are really grateful that you could find out time for this event, and you have given us a very, very in-depth overview of this issue, and you've highlighted the various initiatives that are being undertaken under your chairmanship. Thank you so much, sir. As part of the association, we'll be very, very happy to associate with MPCB and take few of these initiatives forward. We are really proud to have you with us. Thank you so much for your address, sir, today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Now we are very pleased to have with us also Shri E. Ravindran, Member Secretary MPCB. Mr. Ravindran has a Masters in Environment with an LLB and also a Masters in Public Policy. In 2008, he joined IS and was allotted the Maharashtra cadre. He has been the CEO of Jilla Parishad Akola and Sindhudurg district. He was the collector and has also been the district magistrate in Sindhudurg. He was the municipal commissioner for Kalyan Dombivali Municipal Corporation, and that was where that his work was very well appreciated by the society. Particularly the initiatives he took regarding cleanliness. He said that while he was on his way to join KDMC in 2015, he on his way to taking charge, he saw huge heaps of garbage on the road. So that time itself, he decided that the first issue that had to be resolved was cleanliness. And while his car was moving, he also saw that the roads are narrow and the vehicles could not move properly. So encroachment was the next issue. And in the next few days, he came to know that water was also an issue, which also needed to be solved. So solving these three issues was his major target. And with the help of the state government, as a commissioner, he was able to sanction almost 120 crores for solid waste management under Swachh Bharat. And then through Amrit scheme, they were able to get major projects for the sewerage treatment plant. And during his tenure, KDMC stood second in smart city all across India. And also a huge demolition drive was taken on the city roads. And almost there were hurdles which were cleared after 20 years. So from September 2018, he has joined as the member secretary. So Ravindran sir, very, very motivating work that you've done already. And for past 2 years, I can see that you have under your leadership, MPCB is doing a lot of work. So now I request you for your special address. Once again, a very warm welcome, sir, for joining us today.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I think my chairman, sir, has already given a complete overview about the boards and its innovative steps is taken by the board. And also, I was very happy to hear once again Mr. Ravindra Kumar and the presentation from Dr. Gujar was very good, exciting, and it's very good learning point for me also. The philosophy behind today's topic is basically to bring more understanding about the indoor and outdoor air pollutions and also create a more awareness to the public regarding the health impact of the air pollutions. However, when I look at from my board's angle, what would be the responsibility when I hold the organizations to take it to the forward to the public? When I look at it in terms of the boards, I see that we have the huge responsibility of bringing more actually what are the database which is available with us regarding the different levels of pollutions to the public. That's what I find it has to be open to the public so that people are very much aware about what's happening and what are the pollution levels they are living in. That is the first responsibility I find it. Secondly, I also find that the board also has a huge responsibility of bringing the research and development to tackle this kind of pollution based issues. And I think it is not much actually talk about in across the India, that not even the CPCB also not taking much innovative steps to how to bring new R&D into the systems. That is the one, like, I find it, where actually our boards has to pay more attention on it. And also I am finding that we are just looking at when board, we just only focus on only 2 or 3 sectors, whereas we have the 45, 46 sectors, and every sector, or we can say that every aspect or every act of the human being attribute to the air pollution. It's not that that only particular sector is contributing much. And 90% of the time, what board spend is to looking at the industry and industrial pollution, which contributing only 10 to 15% of the pollutions. Whereas look at the transport sector and look at the urban sector, look at the rural sector, and they are actually more contributing to the air pollutions. And the board's activities only focusing 90% of time and 95% of the time spending on only the minimum cost is not the right way of approach. So the board has to extend its role as a supporter rather than a regulator to the other sector also. The thirdly, I will also think that, and now the consumerism so increased, and the consumers have many number of choices to choose many appliances or many technologies which they would like to choose. But when you look at back to the technologies or maybe appliances which they are using, whether it's have the adequate carbon footprint, whether they are going for the clean technologies, the people are very much aware about it, so that they can actually, when you do the choice, and they're going for the right choices. So that is, I think, we need to create a more awareness among the public. And this also the board has a responsibility. I think other department also can pitch into this area. They can do more consumerism oriented or target oriented campaign. And many times actually the recent lockdown, I think everybody might have noticed the clean air in last 6 months with the huge economic cost. But it shows and it taught to us that 80% of the anthropogenic pollution can able to reduce it. But it is with a huge cost. But we have the alternate technology and we have the alternate mechanism to do. Even though the energy sector is contributing big air pollutions, but still you see that this alternate energy technologies which can give the way. But look at the transport sector and look at the urban sector, whether is there any alternative. And we have to find alternative for that. And because those are the area where most of the pollutants has come from that, and especially for the particulate matters, and especially for the NOx and SOx are from these sectors. So how we are going to tackle is the biggest challenge. And I hope this, I'm giving me this opportunity. And it's very happy to actually participate in the second webinar. And I'm very much thankful to the Alumni Associations Delhi, and especially to Mr. Ravindra Kumar, who actually make this happen very dynamic. And I think I'm very happy to hear again and again to you guys. Thank you very much. And wish you have a very good cleaner and for the blue guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Once again, you took out time for us and have given your address. We are very pleased to have you. And now I would request our next speaker, Dr. S.K. Goyal. Dr. S.K. Goyal is Principal Scientist and Head CSR NEERI's Delhi Zonal Center. He has his Master's in Chemical Engineering with specialization in Industrial Pollution Abatement from IIT Roorkee in 1989 and his PhD from Nagpur University in 2002. He has multidisciplinary research experience and has significantly contributed to various projects relating to carrying capacity-based development planning studies for different topographical zones leading to sustainable development of the region like Doon Valley, Jamshedpur region, Greater Kochi region, Sambhalpur, Jharsuguda region, iron and manganese ore mining in Odisha, environmental impact assessment for different industrial sectors, assimilative capacity-based industrial development planning studies, air and stack emission monitoring with QA/QC performance evaluation, hospital wastewaters, paper manufacturing process optimization. He has more than 100 research publications in journals and conference and has supervised over 20 master's students on air and water related topics. He received Professor R.C. Singh Prize for Greatest Practical Importance paper by the Institution of Engineers in 2006. Welcome, Dr. Goyal, and now I would request you to present your special address.
Thank you, Dr. Gitanjali. I hope that I am audible. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. Please continue with your presentation.
Thank you very much. I think much is already said by the chairman, sir, and previous speakers, Ravindran ji, Mr. Ravindra Kumar, Dr. Gurjar, So I think very little is left for me to say, but still I try to focus on the action points, that what should be the approach and how little efforts are required, and what are the action points that we should keep in mind in addressing the issues of urban air pollution. So my topic of the talk is the understanding urban air pollution and approach for clean air, that non-attainment to attainment, that is NATA. I say it's NATA. Next, please. The presentation outline is like the non-attainment cities in India and Maharashtra. What affects air quality, major sources of air pollution? What is the impact of the lockdown on air quality levels in Delhi? The need for focused air quality improvement strategies. Air pollution problem diagnosis. That is very important, that what needs to be controlled and how it is to be controlled, that we again have to continuously work upon that. It is a continuous process. Then overall integrated approach to summarize the overall talk. So these were the 102 initial cities identified as the non-attainment cities, and finally the 122 cities were identified based on the levels of RSPM or PM10 in the entire country. And Maharashtra has almost as much as 18 cities out of the 122 cities. And probably we may miss some of the cities here, which may appear to be much more polluted than what we are seeing some of the non-polluted cities or less polluted cities. And there could be many reasons for that. That now the question comes, do we agree all these cities? And we have to be very careful in, is it only the particulate matter, or whether it is PM 2.5 or PM 10? This again, we have to again keep on assessing, addressing that. Is it the real parameter, or if it is a real parameter, then what should be the control strategies only for this parameter and for the other parameters also? Next, please. So this is the scenario in Maharashtra. If we say, Maharashtra has 36 districts. Out of the 36 districts, 18 cities. Can you go to the previous one? Now it is Maharashtra, please. Out of the 18 cities, if you look at the only except Mumbai and Thane, other cities are not appearing as the polluted cities or the non-attainment cities. Whereas if we move from the coastal side towards the plain side, number of cities are increasing. And if we see that Akola, Amravati, some of these cities, even Jalna, Jalgaon, Kolhapur, etc., looks like that what would be the real cause of air pollution in such kind of cities. So that again we have to cross-check, verify that what are they really the cities where the air pollution levels are representative in terms that there the levels have significantly reached to the level, and the target for the next 5 years is 20% reduction by 2024. And I have gone through the reports prepared by the action plans prepared by the MPCB. Next, please. Now, if we see any city, then what are the major sources of air pollution that has already been dealt with the previous speakers? Vehicular pollution, road dust, multiple industrial sources, construction and demolition waste, garbage or biomass burning. In case of Delhi, it is the landfill sites further add to the pollution problem of air pollution, then domestic fuel burning, and other sources like hotel and restaurants, crematoria, and rediwalas, particularly during the winter season. So these further add to the various sources of air pollution. And besides, the season-specific two issues, particularly in the northern region, are the large-scale paddy or stubble burning in Punjab and Haryana, and the firecrackers in Delhi and NCR region. These are the two major local issues, would say, or the regional issues, which are the season specific or for a limited period of time. Next, please. Now, more or less similar situation in all the cities. Magnitude may vary depending on pollution, population, and activity levels in different seasons. So these are the two major events that happen every year now. And perhaps this is the right time to have the International Day of Clean Air Now this indicates that the preparedness has to begin now, that we have hardly 1 month left when these kind of scenarios will be seen in the Haryana Punjab region, and again we'll have the similar kind of situation in Delhi and the northern region, when stubble burning would be considered as a major cause of air pollution in Delhi. And there have been number of action plans have been prepared for this. However, there is effectiveness of the action plans are yet to be seen in a long term. Therefore, it requires some kind of different approach or the integrated approach. Next, please. Next click also. Now, we know that the pie of this whole, the number of sources of air pollution in any city or in any locality or any districts are known. Vehicular, industries, domestic, road dust, biomass burning, hotels, crematoria, stubble burning, landfill sites, and others. Now, what should be the approach for the control of these different sources? First is the quantification of these sources, how much each source is contributing in the locality or in the city or in the district or in the state. So what should be the approach? These sources are contributing different type of pollutants in different time frame, different time scale, and these activities are happening on a different levels. So it requires an integrated approach for air quality improvement plans for any city, any area, and it can start with the district-wise approach, city-wise approach, locality and ward-wise approach, depending upon the level of activity. It is not uniform throughout the city or throughout the country. So it has to be depending upon the need of a city. If I talk of Delhi or Bombay kind of situation, then probably the ward-wise approach will be more relevant, or even the locality-wise approach will be more relevant. But if we talk of the certain smaller type of lesser populated cities, then probably city-wise approach would be more appropriate. But when we talk of the, when we take the studies or carry out the studies, then we focus on the city level approach or ward level approach, but all the sources within that district needs to be taken into account. Otherwise, the study remains as a incomplete kind of study. The inputs are not taken from the regional background, which can also contribute to those sources in the region. Then air quality monitoring station wise, then what is the representativeness of the air quality monitoring station is very important. Whether it represents half a kilometer, 2 kilometer, 10 kilometer, 20 kilometer, what could be the representativeness of the air quality monitoring site? That also needs to be assessed properly and see that what is the effectiveness of those implementation or those static action plans on the air quality improvement levels. Then the source wise, the source category wise, or the sector wise, the parameter wise, whether it is only particulate matter or it is particulate matter with other pollutants, SO2, NO2, VOCs, whatever the parameter of concern is there. So the strategy has to be, again, we look for the co-benefits of the different parameters, but what is the target pollutant and which strategy will work in which area, that also needs to be evaluated. And the season wise, whether it is applicable in all the seasons or it is applicable in different seasons. The scenario in winter and summer will be totally different. And the best strategy, there are the three approaches that the control at the source, between the source and receptor, and at the receptor. So the control at the source is the best approach. And like we have seen that in the crematorias, a huge quantity of wood is burnt. So again, there is a need for that, how this fuel type or the process can be improved by improving the combustion mechanism or by replacing the type of fuel being used. And of course, this requires the adequate funds and the willingness to execute those activities. This is just an example of that, how the air quality levels have gone down at 4 locations in Delhi. 2 locations represent the traffic intersection or traffic affected zones, and one is the industrial area and one is the residential area. You can see that during the month of March and April, in the lockdown period, the PM 2.5 levels reduced significantly during this period, and this was the combined effect of the lockdown activities. Lockdown means all the industrial or most of the traffic activities were reduced, plus the change in the meteorological parameters during the month of March and April. So that also the meteorological factors are also to be taken into account, that yes, the meteorology has played a very significant role in this kind of analysis. Next, please. This is with respect to NOx. Again, next, please. So CRRI, that is the station, is an ITO. These two stations represent very much the kind of vehicular pollution or the traffic movement, and the impact of traffic, limited traffic during that lockdown period is quite evident from this kind of this scenario. So now mostly business as usual situation. Now what will happen next? This was the lockdown situation, but once this lockdown situation is over, I think this situation seems to be again becoming to the business as usual kind of situation, though Delhi has recorded the best days this year, and we have seen many days of clear skies in past 1 month, very blue skies, that what we are aiming to, we have witnessed in Delhi. And now again we are afraid, or I would say afraid in the sense that once the October starts and this stubble burning season starts, then the situation seems to be, can it be reverted, or it is going to be what it used to be earlier. Next, please. Now what it also needs to look at the site specific problems. Site specific problem means what is the air quality monitoring domain represented by a air quality monitoring site. If you see in a Delhi or Bombay kind of situation, the air quality monitoring site is surrounded by the land use pattern around the typical air pollution, sources in the area. Even the parking lots are not paved properly. So this kind of situations are very much prevalent in the congested cities, like which are having a very high population density. The Delhi is having something about 12,000 persons per square kilometer, and Bombay is having something about 20,000 plus per square kilometer persons. So this kind of situation, then what is the representativeness of this air quality monitoring station? So the activities taking place in the vicinity of the air quality monitoring station needs to be properly assessed, and see that whatever the control strategies are applied or the action plans are derived, that helps in improving the, or that gets reflected in the air quality of that area. Next, please. You can see this is one typical example of Anand Vihar in Delhi, where it is seen that nearly 73% of the area is built up area. Vegetation is only 12% and barren land is 15%. And besides, there were 2 interstate bus stands there. So, and a huge traffic movement in terms of heavy duty buses, trucks, and the 4-wheelers, everything is there. So what is the representativeness of such kind of air quality monitoring station, and what should be the the different action plans to control the air pollution, which can be reflected at the air quality monitoring side? We need to keep this point also in our mind. Next, please. Another important aspect is the meteorological patterns. This is the mixing height in different months in Delhi. This is the red one is the October month. The mixing height is reducing in December. This is December. The magenta, this purple one is December. However, the mixing height was slightly more in the November month. And January, it was minimum in the month of January. The point is that the mixing height, it shows the ventilation available during the entire day period. It is from almost from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. or so. So this is the only window available for the dispersion of pollutants, and that means the 8 hours, almost 8 hours of the day, the ventilation is good. Otherwise, rest of the time, the ventilation is very limited, whereas the sources perhaps would be the level of emissions would be similar in the remaining time period. So this requires again a need for the air quality monitoring, not only for the 24-hourly monitoring, but also as per the during the different hours of the day. Perhaps the analysis of continuous monitoring stations will help in analyzing this pattern. And this is how this air quality correlates well with the mixing height during the different hours of the day, you can see the once the mixing height is more, the pollution levels are reduced during the daytime period. For the particulate matter PM10 and PM2.5 also, though the levels are exceeding the national air quality standards, but the pattern is very well correlating with the mixing height of the region. Next, please. Now, when we are talking of the sector-specific approach, particularly for the with respect to the vehicular pollution, I think it requires a lot more to be done and to be tackled in each aspect of that particular city. Again, it has to be taken into account with respect to the city, that what are the different parameters that contribute to, whether it is 40% air pollution, that may vary from any time, any value, from 10% to 50-60%, the contribution of vehicular pollution. To add to that is the road dust resuspension. So the conditions of road, it becomes very important to see that what is the condition of road, and different months, the level of emissions from the road will further add to the air pollution problem. And in air pollution problem, when we monitor it as PM10 or PM2.5, it is difficult to find out. It is the total concentration. It is not that what is the contribution specifically from the each sector, but it is the total contribution in terms of the air quality of PM2.5 or PM2.5 and exceedance with respect to the standards. Next, please. So all these steps, identification of these sources, quantification, prediction, monitoring, management, and further monitoring needs to be looked into. Next, please. So level of implementation, how much reduction versus improvement in air quality needs to be assessed with respect to each policy. If we are targeting the vehicular pollution is a major cause of concern in a particular city, then all these aspects needs to be looked into thoroughly. Next, please. Now comes the problem diagnosis for any city, understanding activities of a particular city and air pollution issues of each city. And again, I would re-emphasize that when we are doing the study for each city, and I think this should be extended to the district level boundary. And all other activities happening in the district, including the rural area, other important districts, should also be taken into consideration. The level of activities, the level of pollution sources, air quality levels, meteorological conditions, their variations, their magnitude of different activities should also taken into consideration. Next, please.
Sir, I think we'll need to conclude, sir, please.
Just two more slides.
Okay, sir.
Just a brief example of that, how the level of activities affect the level of pollution or air quality in the level in any area. This is the example of the population density in the Delhi and NCR region. You can see the population density of Delhi is 12,500, whereas the most of the cities or the districts do not have even the 1,000 population density. So again, the strategies have to be city specific or the district specific, and each district has to have its own now the air quality improvement cell kind of thing. Next, please. So now to summarize the things, each city and region are not same and similar. Therefore, an uniform mitigation strategy will not be applicable. Need to develop the local expertise. For each district, one institution or one agency needs to be expertise, which can be further mentored by the academic or professional institutes like IIT or NIRI. Needs simplified approach, easily understood and implementable by everyone, every citizen. Next, please. Need to account and integrate for frequently changing local developmental policies. Set sector-wise smart goals in holistic manner to achieve substantial improvement in targeted times. Again, need to work fast. Should not quote examples of certain cities which took now long times, 15 to 20 years. Those days are gone now. Those were the days in the 90s or so. But now the period has come. We have to work very fast. We have to work very systematically in a focused manner to achieve the set goals. Next. Need to create proper institutional mechanism and ensure its integration within the region. Develop city-specific or district-specific programs with effective implementation strategy. Next, this is the overall summary of the whole air pollution studies. integrated and result-oriented approach for from the air quality, achieving the air quality standards. What should be the approach for the local as well as regional air pollution issues? Meteorology, consideration of meteorology, atmospheric chemistry, modeling, pollutant dispersion, health impacts. Somehow health impact does not get the adequate emphasis in the studies, but that needs to be there. The policy analysis has to be included in the studies. Then how effective any pollution study is there. And this is a continuous assessment of the problem, a continuous assessment of the situation for the continual improvement of the situation. Next, please. And with this, I conclude my talk. And this is what we aspire. But again, we have to work on different sources of air pollution together in a synergistic manner. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me. And I'm really thankful to the IIT and MPCB for this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Goyal. Really very comprehensive and very presentation that you have given, and we'll surely get in touch.
Thank you.
I think Gitanjali has got disconnected. Who is the next person? Can please continue?
I don't know. I'm supposed to speak next, but I am sorry. My presentation is with Gitanjali, so maybe
it would be with the yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Satish.
That's
Okay.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Please continue.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I do realize that I am between most of the people and between their lunch. So, okay. And I do not have many slides, so I'll be going quickly. Thank you very much. Next slide, please.
Okay.
Yeah. So the story starts in 1960s when basically a group of neighborhood people noticed that the bald eagle is getting extinct, which is the American emblem, which you might have noticed in all the American emblems everywhere. So, and that is when they started finding out what is the reason why the problem is happening. And they found that it is basically the DDT, which is responsible for the thinning of the shells and leading to the extinction of the osprey. Next, please. And that's how three gentlemen from the neighborhood come together and decide that science is what is required to defend the environment. And thus EDF is born. EDF is not a funding organization. It is very much an NGO. The fund was basically a nomenclature that was used because that was the neighborhood fund that was put together. So there was a lawyer, there was a scientist, and there was a doctor, and all three together, they started EDF. Next, please. While we work on air pollution, and after listening to everyone, eloquent Chairman Sir, and also Dr. Gujjar, Dr. Goyal, we realize that industry plays a very important role. But we also realize that keeping the industry in front of us and being in an opposite side of the discussion is not going to help. So probably what is required is when you work with the industry in order to improve. 1980s is when EDF started working with the industries, and it was the first NGO to develop market-oriented incentive schemes, incentive-based mechanism in order to work with the industry, where the industry was given incentives for improving their emissions, or let's say controlling their emissions. Next, please. EDF also takes the credit of being the only organization which developed the system, and it used this system to control America's acid rain problem. So when people talk about the emissions going down and how CARB, etc., the organizations were responsible for implementing the right policies, most of them were EDF was behind many of those. Next, please. EDF also worked with most of this CARB organizations in order to develop vehicular-centric policies, mostly for the in-use vehicle emissions. As Mr. Srivastav said, one of the biggest problems that we are facing is the in-use vehicle emissions. And that will remain as a vehicle problem, because needless to what people say, new vehicle penetration into your existing fleet, which you call the legacy vehicles, will never be more than 2 to 3%. So we have to work on the existing fleet of legacy vehicles or in-use vehicles. Next, please. This is where we work. We are approximately 700 plus people, a team of doctors, lawyers, and scientists. And just to make it clear, we work with industries as well as governments, but we do not take funding from industry or government. So we work with various state governments, country governments, etc., or many industries, but we never take fund from them. We bring our own funds. Next, please. Thank you. Next, please. Climate and energy is the division where we work, and we started working on because of our climate interest and emissions interest. We started working on mapping methane emissions. We wanted to see how the methane emissions is happening in different livelihoods, and we were trying to do that in a neighborhood when we were approached by Google, who are working with us in different program, and they said, since you are interested in emissions and you are, we had researchers, we had ourselves, we were carrying a backpack full of sensors, which was catching the methane emissions. And that's when Google approached us and they said that, how much are you going to cover by walking? Why don't you use our vehicles? And that's when we started using their vehicles. Next, please. And we called this the hyperlocal air pollution mapping. So hyperlocal air pollution mapping is a project which EDF developed, in which we put our sensors on the Google Street View cars. And one of the objectives is to get a cost-effective way of identifying hotspots, putting them in a GIS map, ensure targeted approach. So let's understand that somebody's hyperlocal is tomorrow's ambient air pollution. So if we are able to pinpoint the hyperlocal today and solve it at a nascent stage, then it doesn't become a bigger problem in front of us where it becomes very difficult to control. Scaling up best practices become much more easy when you know where your problems are. We have so far implemented in Oakland, Houston, Salt Lake, London. And in China, we worked with the environment department to use it as an enforcement tool. So Chinese government used our science to use it as an enforcement tool to pinpoint polluters. Next, please. In this, you can see a Google Street View car in which the sensors have been put. This is a team from our OCS, Office of Chief Scientist, along with Texas. Some of you might know Josh Apty, who's standing there. Next, please. So this is a Google Street View car, and this is exactly what it does. It basically breaks the whole city into grids, and it passes through. Therefore, we know which grid is red. And based on the grid, it becomes much more easy to put a localized control mechanism in order to control the emissions, rather when it becomes ambient and the problem becomes much more, and we have to spend money in identifying the source, which is a source of pollution, which costs nearly 4 to 5 crores and at least 15 to 16 months, if not more. Next, please. So where do we use hyperlocal? Well, we find it has relevance to a lot of things in identification of hotspot. Based on that, we can take targeted actions. We can develop guidelines and reduce emissions from those sectors. And we can also prepare clean air action plans. With very few customizations, these hotspots can be used as a tool for monitoring and enforcement, which is what China is doing and many other governments are now doing using our science. City planning mechanism, identifying clean zones, which London did, is something which can be again used for this. Under the COVID scenario, hyperlocal becomes even more important because it reduces people's exposure to the virus, and rather you can use a vehicle. Thank you very much. Breathe London, this is another project where Google Street View car we used, and this is Mayor Sadiq. Next, please. Next, please. Right. So Breathe London is a unique project because we use 3 kinds of sensors here. We use the stationary sensors. We use, we use the stationary sensors. We use the Google Street View car, and we use personal sensors which were given to each kid. And we were monitoring the air quality between the child's neighborhood and to his school where he or she is walking down to, in order to capture the air pollution from his home to the school and the roads in between. And we were able to use that in order to pinpoint the various sources which were unidentified before, like whether it is the vehicles, whether it's a bakery, or whether it's a truck or any demolition activity going on. Next, please. So we work like this. We work with partners, we work with the government, we work with funders, we work with the academia, National Physical Laboratory, etc., and it is also used as a capacity building program. Next, please. So you might be wondering that what happened to the methane program, because that was the origin of our hyperlocal. Well, this is Fred Krupp, who's our president. And in 2019, we decided to launch our own methane satellite, which is getting prepared. And because of COVID, we could not launch it this year. Now, most probably it will be launched in the early 2021, which is going to monitor methane emissions from across the world. So we have not left our methane plans, and we are very much looking at working with various governments on hyperlocal air quality monitoring in India. Thank you very much. I'll stop here, Gitanjali. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Partha, for joining us. And you have great experience in the transport sector. You've been the secretary of SIAM, and then you worked with Clean Air Asia as director for 8 years, and you did commendable work, particularly in the transport sector. So thank you so much for this presentation. And we would like to collaborate with you. We'll try to work out.
Sure.
Dr. Goyal has also mentioned, and I'm really grateful that today, at such a short notice, we could celebrate this wonderful day. So for that, I'm grateful to our president, Mr. Ravindra Kumar, for giving me this opportunity. And sincere thanks to Maharashtra Pollution Control Board for extending like a blanket support to me. We had the gracious presence of the chairman and the member secretary, Dr. Modghare, was instrumental in getting all the consent. And from our side also, and I'm grateful to the experts who have delivered the lectures. Professor Gujar again gave a very comprehensive overview. Then Dr. Goyal again. We would like to, and thank you so much, Partha, also. So we would like to work on the way we can work out a way forward. We could definitely collaborate with few things. We'll get in touch with you for the hyperlocal thing. I am not very sure how we can take it completely forward, but some of the aspects I think we can take forward from today. So I'll get in touch with you, and thank you so much all the participants from NEERI, from MPCB regional offices. I can see the various corporations from state of Maharashtra, my friends and colleagues in this air field, I can say. So thank you so much everyone for joining, and soon we'll have another series like what we have already, which has been launched, the Mahaparivesh series. So we'll have these experts once again for better insights into their work. So we'll have Partha for transport sector, we'll have Dr. Goyal for the industrial sector. So I am very sure that you all will get more time to interact. So thank you so much everyone. We'll stop here now. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.